Thanks, Craig. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy that that all of you have showed up. Pretty amazing that I left work on Friday and it was raining and 10 above. So things change pretty fast around here, but maybe that's our competitive advantage in southern Alberta. We're a product of our environment, and we have no choice but to be very adaptable. We actually had 5 speakers cancel on us through this conference, and we're very happy that things are actually running as smoothly as they are. And yeah, I would like to echo my thanks to Jamie as well. She's running the show here. On a particular note, I did want to apologize for this one screen that seems to be bouncing a lot. We've been trying to figure it out for the last, I don't know, 6 years why we have this one screen that bounces, and I just found out that directly above that is the honeymoon suite. So there's not much we can do about it. I apologize. To keep in mind, throughout my presentations, what I'm doing is presenting on incomplete information. So take everything that I'm saying with a grain of salt. Be critical about what I'm saying as well, because I'm critical of what I'm saying. Part of the reason is that we haven't had the opportunity to run through the entire lifetime of these projects. And Farming Smarter has been evolving a lot over the last number of years, trying to grow and meet the demands of our very innovative farmers. So that really doesn't leave us much of a choice but to talk about projects that we're halfway through. This is a very interesting project that 2.5 years ago was started by a field school module led by Dr. Bob Blackshaw. And the idea was, we've got this auto steer now, and we're spraying at all hours of the night. We've got great big high clearance sprayers. Our capacity to do things have changed, and likely the products that were registered that we use on our crops were not probably registered with data used at obscene hours of the night. So the field school module was very well attended, and it was probably the most aggressively interactive modules that we had, because guys were really quite interested. So based on that, we put forward a project to the funding consortium to look at that very thing. And it has been evolving, and it has been a very interesting project to work on. Sorry, it's a little blurry. It says, look at the worms. Pretty excited about the worms that it grew, and then we have the typical farmer response, well, better spray them. And this is part of why we're doing the project is to sort of change that mentality, and that we have to do a better job connecting with the urban population and telling the good stories that we are really working hard as producers to be as efficient with our products as possible. So the night spraying project is really, it's not to say, hey, we should be spraying at night. It's to learn, can we be more efficient? Can we make more money by, doing things better with our spray applications? So some of the questions that we had is, can time of day influence the herbicide and fungicide efficacy and crop tolerance? More specifically, we want to look at different groups of herbicides and fungicides, both contact, systemic, and the different modes of action. Does that have any effect on the time of day? So, and the long-term outcome is that, can producers or applicators fine-tune their scheduling to maximize the benefit for these different types of products? And what I'm really worried about is if I have to start a third project on night spraying insecticides, whether I'm going to have any staff left, because it's actually a lot of work having to come in and spray at 4 in the morning, at midnight, and all these strange hours of the night. But surprisingly, everyone involved in the project has been very good. And you'll notice that every picture that I have of somebody spraying in the dark, they've got a great big smile on their face. So that's Mike spraying. It's fun to do crazy things sometimes, but it's more fun when we start to see some results that might have true impacts on your production. Here's our summer student smiling away. She never smiles, this girl, but for some reason we got her out at night spraying, and you can't wipe the smile off of her face. So interesting. A third student also smiling. So what are some of the environmental influences on herbicide and fungicide activity? Because it has nothing to do with the actual time of day, but the environmental conditions associated with that time of day. So temperature, obviously very important. We know that. Humidity, likely very important, although I'm not too aware of the true mechanisms involved with that, and that's part of what we're going to try to discover over the course of these projects. The amount of sunlight, and this has to do with solar radiation and potential degradation of certain chemicals. And also leaf orientation according to sun. So there's been a lot of studies in the States on corn and some other types of crops and other weeds where the leaves will actually follow the sun, and then at night they'll close right up. So you've got this physicality difference. You can't actually get the chemical touching the leaf at night. So there's potential changes there. Some dramatic effects like a very heavy dew, we know can influence things. Soil characteristics, that's your phone, Jamie. Nice. All right, I take back all the good things I just said about Jamie. Just kidding. Anyways, soil physical characteristics will actually affect some of our residual chemicals, so amount of organic matter, pH levels and stuff like that. And of course in southern Alberta, there's the wind factor, just being able to get that product to your intended target. And this one is pretty cool. I think this is the new international symbol for auto steer. Is that right? I found that one on Google, thought it was pretty cute. So quick lowdown on the trials themselves. We've got 3 separate trials. We have a pre-seed burn down trial. So this will have different environmental conditions because we tend to do our pre-seed burn downs in April and May when the cooler temperatures and such. I mentioned our 3 spray timings, dawn, noon, and midnight. And yeah, we were actually really good at hitting those spray times. And we also did 2 spray dates, and that's just really so that we'd have different environmental conditions to get a better handle on any potential differences that we saw. In this case, we used Vantage as our glyphosate, and rather than doing the actual combinations of the pre-seed burn down packages like pre-pass, heat, and clean start, we just took that additive chemical out and sprayed it on its own because we wanted to be able to see those different groups of herbicides and how they behave differently. Our first date we did at a 3/4 rate. We wanted to make sure that if there are differences that we would actually be able to see them because I didn't want to have people coming in and spraying at 4 in the morning and midnight and then see no results whatsoever. And as the weeds got bigger, we went back to our full rates on that one. For our data collection, we did 3 visual ratings. So those are ratings on herbicide efficacy and no crop tolerance in this case. And then a quantitative measurement of weed biomass. We literally got down on our hands and knees and cut up the weeds and weighed them. For our InCrop study, this one, we had plots in one direction, and then we had a simulated weed across the plots. So we used mustard as our broadleaf weed, and we used oats as our grassy weed, as indicated. The study included both types of canola, Roundup and Liberty, wheat and peas. Same spray timings. For data collection, we did visual ratings, crop tolerance, and then the quantitative measurements were biomass of the mustard. So we would sort out the mustard from the crop and weigh it. And same for the oats. We did a crop biomass as an indication of either crop competition, weed competition, as well as any tolerance effects, and then yield. Our products in this case, and we did them all at a 3/4 rate as well. For canola, we had Liberty, Vantage, and Select as a grassy herbicide. Peas, we did Odyssey, Launtrell, and Select. And on wheat, we did Octane, Barricade, Axial, Infinity, and Everest. And when we chose these chemicals, there's no particular reason except that we were trying to cover as many modes of action as possible. A new project that we actually just started this year, so we only have 1 year of results on this, was the fungicide story. Same spray timings. In this case, though, for canola, we were targeting sclerotinia as the disease. We're looking at net blotch and scald for barley, tan spot, spot blotch, septoria leaf blotch for wheat, and Microsphaerella blight and ascochyta on peas. So we had 4 separate trials with 4 different crops. The products that we used in this case were Quadrus, Rovrol, and Vertizan on canola, Tilt, Twinline, and Quilt on barley, Bravo, Carumba, Prosero on wheat, Acapella, Preaxor, and Lance. I feel like I should be an auctioneer now. The data collection in this case was several visual ratings of disease, both for incidence and severity, and yield and quality analysis. We also have partnered with other groups. In the fungicide case, we have a site out at Brooks. We have with Mike Harding and Ron Howard. We also have Kelly Turkington doing a barley site, and we have some sites up in the Peace River area. The herbicide trials we have here at Lethbridge, one in Sarda, Peace River area, and one with Lara in the St. Paul, Bonnyville area. This was just a quick plug for the ACES, oh boy, the ACES program. This is a tremendous network of weather stations across the province, as you can see here, each dot. And this is where we're actually accessing a lot of really valuable information, looking back at, when we see results, can we determine what happened and help us that. So if you ever have a chance, and even guys are using this for their AFSC claims, weather, so it's a great resource. I think it's tremendously underutilized, so mark this one down, ACES. So this is what we did for looking at our spray dates. This one was actually last year, and we charted our application timings against a graph of just the temperature and the wind. Thought it was pretty interesting to see how patterns, the types of patterns that we saw where wind was very correlated with temperature. So then this is the difference between day and night, is these oscillating almost like sine waves. So at each application, see our dawn application, you notice that our temperature was at its lowest, so was the wind, which is why a lot of people get up early, spray, beat the wind. At midday, you can see where we've crossed, the temperatures are much more reasonable, up to 12 degrees. In this case, we were down at under 5 degrees. And of course, the wind starts to get up, but we know now with modern spray technology that we can spray pretty comfortably up to 25 km/h winds. And then our night application, it was sort of starts hitting different temperatures and wind that are still within more reasonable ranges, but not kind of hitting the bottom peaks or the high peaks that we also want to avoid with hot temperatures. This one is from our spray date from this year, and the difference in this map is actually its temperature versus relative humidity. So we start to see some pretty clear patterns. As the temperature goes up, the humidity goes down. And when we plot our spray timings against that, we can start to see some potential patterns. So a lot of the chemicals that are registered, they say don't spray if it's less than 10 degrees. So this is our line of 10 degrees. And some of our applications are actually hitting below that line, which may explain why we might see some results. We can also throw, with the ACES program, our precipitation. And we like to look at the weather, say 2 or 3 days before and 2 or 3 days after. So it's sort of like it's a really good tool to evaluate your spray job after the fact, so that maybe we can learn something and avoid it next time. One of our spray dates was really interesting in that we always do our noon application first, so that we know that the wind is not ridiculous, and then hopefully we can get the other two timings done. In this case, there was no rain forecasted. The wind was reasonable, so we did our spray application here. And then right about 9 o'clock, we had one of those freak lightning storms come through, and it dumped about 2 to 3 inches of rain at 9 o'clock. And it was Jamie that actually got to do the midnight application that time. So she actually did manage to get in there and spray. It had stopped raining, but it was trudging through the mud. And then our dawn application. We saw some pretty amazing results that I still am completely baffled by. The worst performance in this case was our day application. And I'm not exactly sure why. 9 hours after application isn't really a rain fastness issue, but we'll dig into that a little bit more. So as we move into our fungicide, you'll notice our fungicide applications tend to be later in the season. We don't have those dramatically cool nights, but we still have this oscillating relationship between temperature and humidity. So that's just what it looks like for our fungicide application. Yeah, so again, I mentioned at the beginning, take this with a grain of salt, but if farmer Betty put a gun to my head and said, okay, over the last couple of years, what have you learned over this time of day spraying that I can take home and use on the farm? Understanding that we will have better data in a year or two, but this is what I would tell Betty so that she wouldn't shoot me. On the pre-seed burn down applications, I would avoid spraying your pre-seed burn down in the morning. We have seen reduced efficacy with that early morning application. Our best results were usually in the midday application. And by separating out those tank mix components, we learned pretty quickly that the glyphosate is still the most important part of your pre-seed burn down. So if time of day affects the tank mix component in a certain way, like say it's a contact herbicide, like carfentrazone, usually we should be worried about when the glyphosate works the best. For my InCrop studies, we've seen the most significant visual differences by our early ratings. So what that means is that we're seeing differences in the weed control, but as the season goes on, crop competition really plays that important factor, and we start to see less and less differences. Canola and peas showed more differences than wheat. So basically the wheat herbicides work the best under the most amount of circumstances. The herbicides that we use in canola and peas seem to be most effective. It's not really a function of the crop itself, but likely the group of herbicides that we're using in those crops. The best results for canola were always in the day, unless we got spraying very late in the season and it was very hot. So if you spray in the hot temperatures, the efficacy goes down. The poorest results for canola and peas were, again, like a pre-seed burn down in the early morning applications. And we actually saw some pretty dramatic effects to that. This one's a little bit tricky, but the grassy weed control in peas and canola was best at night. And that's probably because of that photodegradation effect that I mentioned earlier. So in a crop like Liberty, where you know we want to spray it in the middle of the day for best herbicide control, your actual grassy weed efficacy is the worst at that point. So that has implications for, managing things like wild oats. Just a quick picture of an earlier application. You can see how our day application was killing that mustard plant a lot faster than both the night and the early. This is not a big surprise, but still I'm really shocked at how important it is to spray Liberty in the day and not at night. So these are both statistically significant in 2012 and 2013. And we've seen tremendous reductions in yield if you spray Liberty at night. Now, this is at regular water volumes and such, and it is at a slightly reduced rate. So again, this may not be the exact thing you'd see on your farm, but we're talking about a $200 an acre difference in 2012 and $120 difference in 2013. So yeah, we knew this before, but I was shocked at how dramatic of a difference it did have. This is oat biomass in the peas, and I mentioned that spraying Select at night was much, much better. So in the case of weed biomass, less is better, and our night application was 673. When we went to an early application, it was almost 40% higher than our night application. And we went to our day, it was literally double the biomass of weeds. So when I think about even my own farm, and I'm always struggling with wild oats, this is something that I might consider changing my spray practices on. We saw similar results for this with Odyssey alone and with Select and canola, which ends up being just a different rate of Select. This is actually the same slide from last year, but kind of surprised how sensitive Roundup is. And this was a visual rating of weeds 7 to 14 days after we sprayed. And our day was at a 90% control. And it was statistically better than both early and night applications at about 60 and 45%. So it's kind of a significant result there. For the fungicide trials, again, this is only 1 year of trial work, and we're still sort of sorting through the data. But overall, the results were different. and it's likely because we're spraying it at different times and later in the season. So in this case, I would say do not spray your fungicides in the middle of the day. Early has been best in most cases. Now that's different than some of the herbicide results we've been seeing. The peas, which is likely the most sensitive crop to disease, we actually saw significant differences in yield and disease control, early application being the best. For canola, on a couple of trials where I expected to see results because we had tremendously thick, lush crops that would have been conducive to good disease, we saw literally pretty much no effect. On barley, we saw some yield differences. 6 of the 8 ratings of the early application was best, and 6 of 8 of the day applications were worst. With wheat, we didn't see any conclusive yield differences, but 4 out of the 5 ratings in the early application was best, and 3 of 5 was worst at night. This is a graph of the pea yield at our trial in Lethbridge, where we did see a difference where our night application was 16% less than our early application. So when we start to see that type of a yield difference, then it might be worth doing a slight practice change. So long and the short of it, if I was to plan my spraying, I would always try to do my pre-seed burn downs in the heat of the day. I would spray my wheat early in the morning or later at night, and then I would save the middle of the day for the canola and the peas. And if I'm targeting grassy weeds in particular alone, we might consider a night application. So I would very much like to thank all of the sponsors that have given us the opportunity to study this interesting trial, the ACPC being the largest contributor, the AOF Fund, the Alberta Barley, and of course, tremendous support from both provincial and federal governments. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your lunch.